Hello and welcome to the first episode of Fitness with Friends. This is where we'll be interviewing members and friends of the Burn It Fitness community who have incredible stories to share. This first episode is no exception. We're going to be interviewing Jackie Scully. So just a quick preface, just over a year ago on her 40th birthday, she set the Guinness World Record for the longest spin cycle class in history, having been diagnosed with breast cancer just 6 years before that. This is part 2 of her story. The first part you can find in the form of a video that we put together called If I'm Moving, I'm Living. If you happen to be watching, there's going to be a code on screen that you can take a photo of, scan it, and then go and watch that. If you're listening, we'll put a link in the episode description. We highly recommend that you go watch it just to get a bit of context for the conversation we're about to have. Come back and enjoy this. This is awesome. Jackie, welcome to the podcast. We're so honoured at Burn It Fitness to have you as our first episode of the Fitness with Friends mini-series. First of all, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm really well. I'm loving the fact that we're talking and it's snow out there. Is snow outside, which for London looking like Narnia is not a usual thing. But no, I'm really well, better than ever. Thank you.
Excellent, so good to hear. Yeah, I hear it's a bit of a kind of winter wonderland that way. Wales, we haven't really seen much here where we are right now, but it is freezing. So we're going to journey back to the 4th of December 2021, your 40th birthday, when you set a new record for the longest static cycling class of all time. Journey back to that day, like what did it take physically and mentally just to get through that?
When I think of that day, I have to think of the 9 months that led up to that day, because I think a lot of people think about 29 hours on a spin bike on your 40th birthday, but actually the journey starts long before that. With hatching a plan, trying to build a team, trying to get that team to train together, to get to know each other, to trying to work with the Guinness World Records. There are so many moving parts to breaking a Guinness World Record. And I guess the feeling, and you probably wouldn't appreciate it, but the feeling I had when I got on the bike was one of relief, because we did it during COVID times. There was so much riding against it, everything from the rules to interpretation of the rules to whether people were going to be able to get there. I think there was even a train strike on the day, and there were just so many parts that if any one of those parts had broken, the Guinness World Record would have failed. And I think sitting on that bike, I believed that I was the start of a journey that I didn't want to lose. And one of relief and also one of absolute terror.
Wow, I bet. So sitting on that bike then and the timer starts, you're probably just like, wow, relief, great. It's 29 hours, here we go.
I mean, for anyone that's ever done any endurance stuff, there is that moment at the beginning of a really long thing where you sit there and you think, or you stand there and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to be doing this for a really, really, really long time. And I remember thinking to myself, 29 hours is really long. And also they had the door open to the studio because of COVID. And so I was in a draft. And so for the first hour, I was cold and I was thinking, I don't think this is possible. Whilst also part of me was thinking, I don't need to do anything else for the next 29 hours. I don't need to worry about life. I don't need to pay my gas bill. All I need to do is sit on this bike, sing along with my mates, listen to music, and have a great time. So I kept sort of trying to cheat my brain into thinking it would be fine. I will get to the end. But yeah, at hour 1, it was looking pretty ropey.
Wow. And it's obviously you've got like-minded people around you. I imagine they were just there, just like constant. Because I mean, I've seen the video footage, and hopefully for those watching, I'll be able to lay some video footage over the top. It looked like such fun. Like you were having a laugh. It seemed that I think you had like the music, the playlists. You had. Did you have like various different spin coaches at the front, like coaching you classes? So it wasn't just a straight through maintain your cadence. It was up and down and sitting and going.
It was an entire class, but the Guinness World Records insisted you have one instructor. So the one instructor she choreographed more than 600 songs, I think, and she basically gave dialogue across the whole class. So if you can imagine, at points her voice was going, she was exhausted because she had to maintain the energy in the room whilst also teaching, whilst also doing a record herself. So, I mean, she was absolutely phenomenal. But I have to say, the thing for me that I will never forget, and it's really hard to explain for anyone that wasn't in the room, was there was an energy in that room that I cannot to this day sort of reimagine. It was a room of people who wanted to succeed. They were strangers. A lot of these people had never even met. Some people I'd never met. And together they came in a room and they decided they were going to stick it to the end. And for me, it wasn't really about the record. It was about getting these people to the end of a line that some of them didn't even know that they deserved even to be at the start line. A lot of people came with their injuries or health concerns or long COVID. There was a lot of people in that room who didn't believe they could do it. And that's why I put them on a bike. Some of them I put next to me on a bike because they really didn't think they could do it. So for me, the whole thing was about getting those people to the end. And when I saw them all get to the end, it was just a feeling unlike anything I've ever experienced before, and a genuine sense of deep satisfaction and euphoria that these people didn't think it was possible, and it was.
Wow, because that was to be my next question. What was if you could sum up that 29 hours and 5 seconds ticking by, you've done it. What was that feeling? I guess it would have been euphoria, like you kind of lose yourself in that moment. It must have been so exhaustingly surreal, and just like you say, the gratitude, the satisfaction that everybody did you say everybody completed it?
Everybody completed it. And at the time, so the rules are quite stringent and also stringent, but also quite vague in that so few people have actually done them that they're quite open to interpretation. So in the end, we agreed that all of us would rest together, which meant we had to go to the toilet at the same time. We had to get off the bike at the same time, and that made it incredibly logistically complex. And we had to plan in our rest breaks so that we had 2 hours on, 8 minutes off, 2 hours on, 8 minutes off, and then we increased the rest time because you got 5 minutes for every hour, but we thought 2 hour chunks would give us a bit more time to move around and things. So it was really, really logistically complex. But hilariously, I remember the overriding emotion when I got off the bike was I was so tired, I was so relieved and euphoric, and then I looked around and the whole studio looked trashed. There was confetti, there was Pringles all over the floor, there were like food everywhere. It looked like we'd just completely trashed the studio. And I remember looking at the owner being like, I am so sorry. And she was like, Jackie, I have glitter bombed this place before. This is nothing. And within about half an hour, an army of people had basically rearranged it again. But yes, it's amazing what you think. And the last thing I thought I would think as I came off the bike was, oh my goodness, get me a broom. I need to clean up.
Brilliant, of course. I wouldn't expect anything else. There were a crowd of people in front of you pretty much the whole time, all cheering you on. Like, who was there? Was there like members of your family? I understand the Guinness World Record team were there as well. There were a lot of people in that room.
Yeah, no. So actually, the Guinness World Record team, basically, it's quite a commercial thing. So unless you're a sort of corporate organisation, it's quite difficult to fund getting them there for the day. And also because of the size of it, you still had to do all the evidence anyway. So I made the decision to give that money to charity. So we actually had to get 18 strangers, so independent witnesses who knew nobody, they didn't know the venue, the charities, anyone on the bike, anyone related to anyone on the bike. So it was really quite difficult to find 18 amazing human beings who would turn up in 4-hour blocks and basically watch us to document that we were doing it properly. Now, these people travelled from all across the country on their own expense, and they stayed there for 4 hours, some through the night, so 2 till 6 a.m, dancing. They brought pom-poms, they sat there. I mean, it was just the most incredible atmosphere. So each one of those 18 people turned up, which was phenomenal. On top of that, we had friends, we had family members, we had fun bikes at the back, so people who were just really interested to come and do an hour. My father-in-law turned up at 2 a.m. and sat on the bike for a couple of hours. There was just this like rich sort of group of people just coming together, people that would never otherwise come together, which I loved. And even my boss turned up after a party at like 1 a.m. with his wife, and they were dancing with pom-poms, and they were there with us. And there was one lady who turned up at midnight and said, oh, I'm just going to come and dance for you for a little while. She left at 3 p.m. the next day, and she said that the room made her feel like anything was possible, and she couldn't leave. She felt like it was like a drug that was hooking her into the room. And my parents said the same thing. They left to go to bed. They came back at, I think, 7 a.m. in the morning, and they were going to go off for a walk, and they were like, we can't leave. We just can't leave. We have to be here. The energy is such that we're all with you. And they were. And you know what, without them, I think when we were doing the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. musicals and movies hours, which my friend still reminds me of and says me singing in his ear is tantamount to hell. You know, those hours were dark, you know, dark and dark. And we just had ourselves, the music and our minds. And as soon as people started coming back, that was the moment we knew we'd done it, because we knew we couldn't let anybody else down. And it was special, really special.
So special. I mean, you're always going to look back on that. It's just legacy, right?
Yeah.
You know, that was the culmination of what we discussed in the short stories video, was your 40 things to do before you're 40. And I understand there were a few things that you didn't quite do. And I think one of those was recording a podcast, which, does this count? I guess it kind of...
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's so cool, because I remember there were certain things on that list that were really just, you could go out and do them within an hour, right?
Yeah.
But it was things that you had not done. So I'm going to push, like do a bar class, you know,
Yeah.
anybody could do that. But then there's a massive shift between, let's do a bar class, let's do yoga for an hour, and then let's do a Guinness World Record.
Yeah, and I think at
Crazy.
one point, I think I did 34 out of the 40 things in the end. And I think at one point I just decided that the Guinness World Record was such an undertaking. It took over my life. You know, I had giant
100%.
clocks in the living room. I had to source the most peculiar items. We had food coming in. I had 2 cases of saurine arrived, and I was like literally wheeling them to the studio. You know, so at the end I realized that, you know, the thing that really mattered to me was making sure my 40th birthday party had a purpose. And I never thought I would make it. So for it to be something that I will now always remember as one of the best weekends of my life is pretty special. And I also, when I came to the anniversary only a few weeks ago, what was amazing was I woke up and immediately I was so happy. Obviously it was my birthday, but also I thought to myself, every year now I get to celebrate this day with all the people that came with me and all the volunteers, the lady who stayed up, my amazing friend Hannah, who stayed up for the whole period, except for I think she slept for 20 minutes in the changing rooms. You know, there are so many heroes, not just the heroes that were on the bike. And yeah, that kindness and generosity will live with me forever.
The impact was so vast, and I know you've been a busy lady ever since, and I've been kind of following your journey. I'm going to segue into the word kindness, which I just feel is just at your core, and I felt it like editing and going back through your short story, just constant kindness. It's not just I'm doing this and it's a great challenge, but you know, for me, but the impact and the ripple effect that it has on everybody else. And in doing some research for this, I understand that, I mean, you're an ambassador for the Women of the Future program. Is it correct that you won that award, right, in 2015?
Yeah, so I won the Women of the Future Community Spirits Award in 2015 for all my charitable work. And I also was listed in their inaugural, the 50 Kindest Leaders in Business in 2018. So kindness is, I guess you could say it's part of my DNA. And I always, when I was growing up, I always wanted to help people. It was always about helping people. And now, I guess, as a result of cancer and all the things that have happened to me, having my leg rebuilt, kindness has just grown and grown and grown. And for me, it's conscious. I go out of my way to try and do things. I have a list of things every week where I want to make kind acts, essentially. And I plan it in like I do, you know, my workload. And for me, kindness is at the core. And I think for me, also, exercise, it started out as being something I needed. And now it's something I've realized that by needing it and by showing other people how it makes a difference to life, you can help other people see the value and the benefit and really need it too. And that for me is my biggest driving force now. And I just want people to come with me. I don't want to be alone doing a thing. I want to be surrounded by people who are sharing my energy, are going and doing things. And for me, that's about people creating space for themselves, and exercise gives us that motivation to create space for ourselves, and we all need it because it does wonders for our mental and our physical health. So it's vital.
Oh, absolutely. You have to make time for it, right? You know, we say this, we harp on about it all the time. If you don't make time for something, it's difficult to do, and you just like, oh, I didn't have time. It's because you didn't make it. But you clearly initially made time to exercise. Like you turned to exercise after your cancer diagnosis, and you know, you started doing more and more endurance challenges. You trained with Burn It for a while as well. And it's, like you say, generated energy. And I think nowadays especially, people need to be shown what is possible, not just told. I feel like some people find motivation in just a little quote that they see on Instagram, but you've transcended that. You've gone out there and you've shown, and you've demonstrated that it can be done by doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So what are your kind of, like, if you think of your weekly practices of kindness, I imagine they're pretty simple, but they have to be consistent. What are those, or some of those, if you don't mind?
Contact with people, communication is one of the biggest ones. So I'm everyone's biggest cheerleader. People are often like, how do you cheerlead so many people? And it's because I love it. I coach people voluntarily. I'm a mentor. I leave random things on trains, little messages for strangers.
That's cool.
I have also done some really strange kind acts. So, for example, I have a favourite pub in a seaside town that will remain nameless, and for a couple of years I've put a float behind the bar so that all the locals can have a free drink. I've diverted my food shopping to a food bank, and at the moment I'm doing 24 days of Advent good deeds. So every day I am posting out about a charity that's close to my heart, or one that I think deserves a little bit of a shout out, and donating alongside that. So every day, a little bit of money going towards charity. So for me, charity it can manifest itself in so many different ways. And so kindness can be saying hi to a friend, checking in on someone that you haven't spoken to for a while, reminding someone of how awesome they are. I write so many Christmas cards, and in it I write what I love about people and what they've meant to me. So kindness is a great word. It's also a kind act. It's also, you know, a monetary act. And I try to balance the things so that I feel alive every time I do something kind. And yeah, it's something I advocate to everybody. And I write a gratitude diary every night. And for me,
nice.
It's the kindness that comes out. It's those little moments that you really reflect on, that you realize that you made a difference. And that's what matters.
I think, again, it takes making time to reflect on your day like that. I used to do a gratitude journal myself. I haven't done it for a long time, but I think
should get back to it.
Should definitely get back to it. And it only takes a few minutes, right?
Totally.
Just to offload. And, you know, like you know, what did I learn? What did I contribute today? What could I contribute tomorrow? I think it's just a really nice way to check in. I came across a really cool quote on your page, actually, and I just want to know, is it yours? Throw it around like a stone and watch the ripples.
Well, it's not mine.
That's talking about kindness.
But I love it because, and I think it's really pertinent to all the stuff I've done in my exercise life, which is you do a thing and you never really know what that thing will do to you. And I met a guy, to other people, and I met a guy recently who had a really good example of this, which he said one of the nicest things he said he'd ever done was he was in a queue for a fast food chain, and he bought the people's dinner behind. He just said, look, I'm going to buy whatever it is, whatever they want, I'm going to buy it. And then they were like, oh, wow. So they bought the one behind, and it went on for, I think it was like 100 cars or something. And it's so incredible because that's what it was, you know, that's what he wanted to do. And I think for me, every kind act that you do has a ripple effect. And it's on those people that you're kind to see whether they pick it up and they carry it forward. And so many people pay it forward in life. And I am a great believer, and you might think I'm just overly optimistic, but I'm a great believer that everyone has a little bit of kindness in them. And I think if you travel with kindness, you encourage people to come along on the ride, and that's what I'm all about.
Excellent. 2024 is a big year for you.
Massive.
Why is that?
So I turn 10 years clear of breast cancer, which is a massive marker. I've known so many friends who've not quite made it, or you know, have made it and then were re-diagnosed, and it's a massive, massive milestone. And I really want to mark it in a really big, obviously exercise related way. And obviously I did my I got married around the London Marathon on my wedding day. That was one. And that was to gift our wedding back to charity after being proposed to just 3 weeks before my diagnosis. Then the second one was obviously sitting on a spin bike for 29 hours. So I feel I have a hat trick in me, and I've also raised £93,000 for charity, and I'd like to raise 100,000. So I've got 7,000 to go. My aim is to smash it out the park. I don't want to just limp over the 100,000 mark. And my plan so far, it's still in formation, is I'd like to do 10 things that remind me of all the things I've learned in the last 10 years. Not all exercise related, but of that, I want to go back to the 10K that started it all, that I did on chemo, and encourage as many people to join me on that journey as possible. I obviously will have hair this time, and I won't be looking at my hospital over the water thinking, goodness, I really hope I don't end up in A&E. But that's one of them. I've also got a marathon ballot place that I'm looking to defer into 2024. And then on top of that, I'm also looking at doing a big challenge, and it's a big challenge. I don't quite know what yet, but it's got to be big. It's got to be terrifying. And then around that, I'm going to have a big party and do 6 other things that are about friendship and togetherness and living an awesome life.
So good. My next question was, are there any sneak peeks? And you've just given us many, so I'm very excited about that. We'll have to check it again for sure. And a lot of time, has yet to pass before that. So 2023. Yeah. Let's go back. The last question I asked you in 2021 in your short story, and I'm going to ask it again. What's next for Jackie Scully?
Traveling through each day in a kind and thoughtful way, and whatever exercise-related challenges crop up along that journey. I think I've realized in life that the more I plan, the more I say I'm going to do something, the more life takes me off track. And I've learned that it's the everyday, it's the 5K in the ice, walking out and taking a photo of the Thames when the sun's coming up that makes me feel alive. It's movement, it's being on a spin bike, even now, even after 29 hours, sitting on a spin bike, listening to the music, being surrounded by people who have got out of bed and want to move. So for me, life is about moving, it's about exercise, it's about living your best life, and never forget to be consciously kind to those around you. And I hope that will take me on many more adventures. I'm even contemplating whether I organise my own trek. I'm contemplating lots of things for 2024 because I want to make sure it's a year I look back on and is a reminder, like the 29-hour cycle, that when you put yourself out there, when you do things that you believe aren't possible and they become possible, you inspire not just yourself, but everyone around you. And that's the greatest gift you can offer to others, to help them realize that life is short and you've got to own it.
I think that's a beautiful way to end this podcast. And thank you, Jackie, so much. It's an absolute honour and pleasure to catch up with you again. And hopefully in the future we can get you back on, because I want to hear more about this 2024
challenge. Well, I'm thinking
challenge.
Also there should be a Burn It contingent in my 2024 challenge. So whatever it is, I'm feeling. I mean, Claire was representing last time, so one of my challenge mates was from Burn It. So I feel like there's got to be a continuation of that theme as well.
100%. Thank you so much, Jackie. Take care.
Take care. Bye.